The distinctive drone of Deltic 55015's twin Napier engines opens this issue, which we begin with a visit to the Midland Railway Centre's Diesel Weekend on the 22nd and 23rd of July. Class 25 D7671 leads this quartet of 45133, D8001 and an immaculately repainted Class 50 007. A busy timetable included a flow of DMU movements. Visiting laboratory coach number 19, Iris, is now turned out in 1950s Brunswick green. The signal box, which controls access to the sidings here at Butterley, was rescued from Aysgill on the Settle to Carlisle line. Before conversion, Iris was a motor brake second, number M79900, built at Derby in 1956 with two AEC six-cylinder engines. Next, a saucer shatters the tranquility of Butterley Reservoir. The Class 25 is in the green livery it carried when outshopped from Derby in 1967. Bringing up the tail of this working is the restored Class 31 162. Sir Edward Elgar eases into Swanwick under the attractive gantry rescued from Shipley Junction. Here we see another peak, the Peak Loco Preservation Society's Class 46045, pulling into Butterley. This is the returning Bobo duo, top and tailing their way to Swanwick. Here's another chance to savour the raw power of Tullyar. With the still-to-be-rebuilt 55976 leading, making its debut is the Class 127 power car, 51591, rebuilt from a parcel unit. Also seen and distinctly heard at a busy Swanwick junction is the spotlessly turned-out Class 25. Another star attraction was D8001, which has been restored to represent its 1957 condition, complete with head code discs. For this turn, the Class 20 was working a recreated parcels train. Prior to the repaint, there had been pressure for the Class 50 to be turned out in blue as Hercules. The Class 46 was recovered from the Derby Research Centre, and the restored Peak returned to service at last year's Diesel Gala. The recreation of a pre-res parcels train made an interesting variation and proved very popular with visitors. Here we see the gulls trundling into Butterley. Normally they are banished to the storage sidings. The green Class 20 also recreated this memory of the 1950s. And even Deltic 15 took a turn with the rake. Here's another chance to see the 127 unit. The restoration team have also acquired a centre car so that they can recreate a 250-seat three-car unit. Here, the A1A Group's 31162 heads the parcel stock out of Swanwick with a service to Butterley. Finally, the site of the Class 45 Peak lazily drifting into Hammersmith, with the Class 46 bringing up the tail, concludes our visit to an eventful MRC diesel weekend. By coincidence, the Midland Railway Centre is the home of this issue's locomotive profile, the standard tank 80080. The two-cylinder 264 standard tank was the final evolution of a design introduced to the LMS by Fowler in 1928 and developed by Stanier in 1935 and Fairbairn in 1945. Production of the LMS design continued until 1951. With some minor changes, the proven design met a British Railways requirement for a standard Type 4 mixed-traffic tank. 80080 was one of a class of 155 produced by British Railways. 130 were built at Brighton, from where the standard was outshopped in March 1954. The class was designed for easy maintenance, and the stepped footplate clears the 18 by 28-inch cylinders and outside Walschaerts valve gear. Popular with footplate crews, members of the class have a reputation of being easy steamers. From Brighton, 80080 went to Plaistow to work the Fenchurch Street commuter traffic. Following electrification of the London, Tilbury and Southend line in 1962, the standard was transferred to Croesnewydd, Wrexham. Withdrawn in 1965, she went to Barry. The rescued standard arrived at Butterley in 1984 and returned to traffic in 1987. Rebuilt to mainline standards, 80080 took the Lincolnshire poacher over the Midland Railway route from Nottingham to Lincoln in June 1989. Although designed for mixed traffic, they were in their element, accelerating fast suburban passenger trains. In addition to the standard tanks built at Brighton, 25 were built at Derby and 10 at Doncaster, and the class found work across the country. Here we see the standard making light work of the poacher's 10 coaches, which includes 8 heavy Pullmans, on the run back into Nottingham. In July 1990, 80080 went to London Transport's Neasden depot to work steam on the Met specials between Harrow-on-the-Hill and Amersham. The rolling stock included a London, Tilbury and Southend 4-car set in NSE colours. The 4-car set was augmented by 2 BR coaches, and battery electric loco L44 completed the formation. In the September, the standard was to be found working specials over the Folkestone Harbour branch, sharing the work with Clan Line. This is the 1 in 30 Harbour branch. The following month, the standard returned steam to the Welsh Valleys with a series of runs sponsored by BR's regional railways in South Wales. With Di Woodham a guest on the footplate, an immaculate 80080 departs from Barry Docks, just 11 years since its remains had been recovered from the celebrated Woodham scrapyard. Later that day, the Standard worked a special from Cardiff to Treherbert. This is the famous Rond the Valley. We next catch up with the Standard when 80080 was used for BR crew training on the Settle Carlisle line in 1993. These training duties were run as passenger-carrying workings, providing a local service to Kirby Stephen, stopping at Armathwaite, Lazenby, Langworthby and Appleby. In the October, 80080 joined up with the Severn Valley Railway's 80079 to work over the Cambrian line. Here we see the pair approaching Dovey Junction from Aberystwyth. In their last years of BR service, both locomotives were based at Wrexham and regularly worked the Cambrian system before their final withdrawal. Fortunately, 15 of the class have survived, and we conclude with the 2 examples cleared for mainline running, working back from the 1994 Exeter Rail Fair. Just north of the busy A50 between Stoke-on-Trent and Uttoxeter nestles one of the British preservation scene's most fascinating railways, the Foxfield Railway, dedicated to the industrial railways of Staffordshire. We went to Blythe Bridge for the railway's busy steam gala on the 29th and 30th of July, which included demonstration freight trains as well as passenger workings. this shunt, the visiting Bayer Peacock number 1827 shares the effort with Little Barford, a Barclay 040 saddle tank of 1940. In the background is the signal box which protects the spur into Caverswall Road Station, the main terminus for passenger movements. This departure to the other passenger terminus at Dilhorn Park is shared between the same pair of 040s. The newly rebuilt Cambrian Railway Society's Bayer Peacock dates back to 1879 and is based at Oswestry. This delightful locomotive will remain at Foxfield for the rest of the summer. Although the railway currently depends on Mark I coaches, the latest 5-year plan includes the restoration of passenger-carrying vintage stock. Beyond Dilhorn is the savage Foxfield Bank, a semicircular climb of between 1 in 14 and 1 in 18, which gives access down to the now closed colliery. Peckett 040 saddle tank Lion shares the 16-ton minerals with the diminutive Robert Heath number 6, another 040. The railway plans to relay a run round at Foxfield Colliery, which would clear the line and the bank for passenger operation. Meanwhile, the railway's headquarters is here at Caverswall Road, where the minerals are being shunted by Lion and number 6. Beyond the station spur, the main line continues to the Blythe Bridge exchange sidings, now severed from the BR main line between Stoke-on-Trent and Derby. This is Lion leading an exchange sidings working. The site and its 6 sidings are also scheduled for restoration, to become an authentic stage for shunting and freight demonstrations. Dodging between the cool, tree-formed shadows near Creswell Ford, Little Barford heads another freight working. The 040 Barclay dates back to 1939. Visiting Kerr Stewart 4388 from the railway age at Crewe leads David Scragg's 040 Harwarden, with this freight working heading for Foxfield. The popular Harwarden was in the news in March, when she returned to her former home at the Shelton Steelworks to run demonstration freights, for which the distinctive warning stripes were added, as seen here on Foxfield Bank. And as the Bagnall leads her clattering charges over the top, this is where we must take our leave of the Foxfield Railway. After watching some of the smallest standard gauge locomotives in the country, we packed our gear and headed off to a sun-drenched West Somerset to catch up with one of the largest, the unique standard class 8P Pacific, the Duke of Gloucester. The Duke had arrived in the West Country with a charter to Paynton from Crewe on June the 14th. Problems in Devon left the Duke and its support coach looking for accommodation, and the West Somerset stepped in. This is the Pacific just after Bishop's Lydyard. Special Department of Transport dispensation was given for the Heavy Duke to work a number of runs on the West Somerset, which were all the more welcome to the owners, the 71,000 Trust, following the dry weather bans on mainline steam running. The Duke is the second Pacific to visit Stogumber, but the first, the Duchess of Hamilton, was towed through in 1964 on her way to incarceration at a Minehead holiday camp. Here is one last memorable shot of the handsome Pacific, coasting effortlessly through the shimmering Somerset countryside. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the Bluebell Railway, when a small group of enthusiasts struggled together to prove that volunteers could run a standard gauge operation. From humble beginnings, the line now boasts an impressive collection of preserved rolling stock, including this Mansell S15 number 847, and is on course for its stated objective of reopening the line through to East Grinstead. Services first began on the 7th of August 1960, with top and tail workings from Sheffield Park to a temporary platform just short of Horsted Keynes. Here we see the little P-class Bluebell, recreating these early days with the H-class number 263. As number 31323, Bluebell first steamed into Sheffield Park in June 1960. Her colleague arrived in 1976. The largest locomotive in service is the restored Standard 9F, seen pulling away from Sheffield Park. Western Region 9F was in the last batch built at Crewe in 1958 and came to the Bluebell via Barry in 1976. Bringing up the rear is the restored Great Northern Directors' Saloon. The railway's headquarters are here at Sheffield Park, which still retains a gaslit Victorian charm. Here we watch the South East and Chatham Railway 044 preparing for another departure. Constructed at Ashford Works, the highly polished number 263 celebrated her 90th birthday in May. The railway's stock list now includes an impressive collection of restored Pullmans. Leading this rake is the pride of the Pullman fleet, the kitchen first Fingal, followed by Bertha, an ex-6-pull EMU composite, and parlour third Carl number 64. Completing the train is a gleaming LMS BGZ 6-wheel guards brake. Throughout its 35 years, the Bluebell has remained committed to a steam-only policy, and this looks set to continue. Of the Pioneer formation, the Mansell composite brake and Bluebell did form one half of the original 1960 service. As another celebration service departs, we must not underestimate the debt that we all owe to this gentle, unassuming Sussex Railway, which showed the way to another 50 or more preservation adventures in this country alone. To the Bluebell Railway and the Bluebell Railway Preservation Society, all we can say is, thank you for making it happen. Following the Bluebell, one of the earliest preservation projects was the Dart Valley Scheme, born in 1962, and which finally obtained its light railway order in 1969. Here we watch Pannier Tank 7714, on loan from the Severn Valley, preparing for another run down to Totnes, Littlehampton Riverside. The riveted pannier tanks are the clue that this Swindon design was built by an outside contractor, in this case, Kerr Stewart at Stoke-on-Trent in 1930. 7714 served faithfully in the Birkenhead area until being bought by the Coal Board in 1959. She then worked the Penallta Colliery in South Wales, until acquired by the SVR in 1973. But today's visit is not just to enjoy watching the Primrose Line at work. This is the reason. A visit by the replica of George Stephenson's locomotion No. 1, built by the late Mile Satow for the 150th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway in 1975. Locomotion arrived at Buckfast Lee in mid-July and returns to her base at the Beamish Open Air Museum via a visit to Quainton for the August Bank Holiday weekend. Steam is generated by a single 2-foot flue which runs through the lower part of the boiler, turning up to form the chimney. For the visit, locomotion is accompanied by a rake of replica SDR rolling stock. The 2 vertical cylinders are each mounted over one of the unsprung axles. Like the locomotive, all the curious stock runs in rigid frames. At the tender end of the flue, a fire brick wall and external door create the simple firebox. The driver perches out on the left-hand platform between the independent pairs of connecting rods which drive each axle. Like some mechanical praying mantis, the replica moves off down the yard at Buckfast Lee. The intention had been to run a push-pull working to Staverton, but after one run only, the Railway Inspectorate limited this to demonstrations in the yard, without its rake of replica coaches. The original locomotion was the first of a class of 4, the Killingworth type built for the Stockton and Darlington, and she remained in service for 21 years before retirement. At first, she was on display at Bank Top Station, Darlington, before being moved to the museum at Darlington North Road. These early locomotives were somewhat hazardous to operate. The first locomotion, No. 1, exploded in 1828, killing her driver. It's likely that defective metal caused the crude flue to collapse. But she was rebuilt in her original form. When first built, there wasn't a lathe large enough to turn locomotion's 4-foot diameter cast-iron wheels. The solution was to cast and turn an inner wheel, and the outer casting was then attached by wood and iron plugs and wedges. It really is incredible to consider that the basic technology of this cat's cradle of ironmongery was to lead to the elegant Duke of Gloucester we admired earlier. For now, we can but watch and wonder in amazement that it works at all. For those still wondering how the rigid locomotive stays on the track, there is a crude form of 3-point milk stool suspension with one axle centrally mounted. A 100 years younger, and another colliery workhorse marks the end of this fascinating time warp on the South Devon Railway. From the 7th to the 11th of August, the countryside between Winchcombe and here at Toddington reverberated to the sound of diesel traction. The Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Railway held a diesel week, with a different class featured on each day. We went there on the Tuesday to record one of our favourites, the beautifully restored Class 31 D5541. The Brush Type 2 returned to service last November. It has been restored to its original attractive early British Railways green livery with the distinctive light grey body lines. Class 31 was outshopped in this condition from Loughborough in July 1959. But the diesel entertainment was not restricted to the Type 2. Two of the railway's three Class 14s, D9539 and D9553, were at work recreating an engineer's duty. Here they head for Great Tunnel. Later, we recorded the teddy bears trundling back through the line's intermediate station at Winchcombe. Designed by British Railways and built at Swindon in 1964 and 1965, the 56 Type 1060s were not particularly successful, and all had been withdrawn within 5 years. On the other hand, the older brush Type 2s, of which 262 were built between 1957 and 1962, proved a very successful design, with many of the class still in service. The only real blot on the design's copybook was the original Merleys engines, which were troubled with metal fatigue. The fleet was re-engined with English Electric 12 SVT power packs between 1965 and 1969. While we were there, another English electric-powered locomotive was on the move at Toddington Yard, the Class 20 number 137. Here we see the Brush Type 2 returning the section token to the Toddington signalman. We'll see the Class 20 in action on its GWR Diesel Day when we return to Toddington in the next issue. One of the most interesting developments recently has been Mainline Freight's announcement that it plans to overhaul a number of Class 33 locomotives. The last overhaul on an engine of this type was completed in 1993 at Eastleigh, and many thought that this would signal the gradual demise of the class. The Class 33s have never ventured far from the former Southern Railways metals, and even when regular diagrams were covered as far as Cardiff and on through to Crewe, maintenance was still carried out at Eastleigh, Hither Green and other southern depots. This contributed significantly to the good reliability of the class, which in turn is one of the reasons why the type has been so popular with train crew and operating authorities alike. The order for the locomotives was placed with the Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Company in the late 1950s. Development of classes 24, 25, 26 and 27, an 8-cylinder 1550 brake horsepower engine was controlled by Crompton Parkinson Electrical Equipment, and 98 machines were delivered between 1960 and 1962. It's the use of this powered equipment which has provided the class with the nickname of Cromptons. At the time of the order, the southern region was looking for a medium-powered diesel-electric locomotive, capable of undertaking mixed traffic duties. The specifications stated that the class would be able to heat a passenger train only by the use of electric train heating. In addition, the last 12 locomotives were specifically selected to be built to a narrow body specification. The locomotives were only 8 feet 8 inches wide, due to the narrow tunnels between Tonbridge and St Leonard's on the line to Hastings. These became 33201 to 33212. A further 19 locomotives were randomly selected for the Bournemouth to Weymouth section. Push-pull trials had begun in 1964, using electro-diesel locomotives of classes 73 and 74. But the Class 33s were eventually selected. These 19 were eventually numbered 33101 to 33119, and are easily identifiable by the pipes used for push-pull workings fitted on the cabs at waist level. They were to be the mainstay of the Dorset Way services, as they became known from 1967 until the introduction of the Wessex electric stock in 1988 and 1989. An initial problem with the locomotives was the electric-only heating, when a large number of coaches being used, for example on the Kent coast, only had steam heating. As a consequence, in the early 1960s, it was commonplace to see one of the 15 smaller products of the builder, the Class 24, coupled between the Class 33 and the train, providing steam heating as well as additional power. One of the most endearing features of the locomotives to footplate crews and operating staff alike is the fact that they can be driven from both the left and the right-hand side. As with all other British Rail mainline diesels, the Class 33s are normally driven from the left-hand side of the cab. However, a 7-second delay on the dead man system allows a driver to move from one side of the cab to the other. On the right-hand side, the power and brake controls are duplicated, and this makes the locomotive extremely easy to operate in freight yards. During the 1980s, it seemed that requirement for this type of locomotive was beginning to reduce. However, and fortuitously, towards the end of the decade, there was a growing requirement for reliable locomotives to assist with the construction of the Channel Tunnel. The locomotives were often used in pairs on heavy trains such as those delivering the concrete segments which formed the lining of the tunnel itself. The recently announced overhauls are to be undertaken on foreign territory for the class at Towton Depot in Nottingham. stored example, probably number 33029, is to be sent to the depot during June or July to allow the depot fitters to become familiar with the class. It's intended that an initial batch of 4 locomotives will then be sent to the TMD in the autumn. It's possible that included in this number may be machines which are currently in store. It's somewhat ironic that if this project is successful, this may signal the demise of the similar-sized Class 31. It's no secret that the operating companies wish to reduce the number of classes of locomotive, and this may be the ideal opportunity to choose which will survive. This edition of Railtape ends with what we are hoping will be a regular feature. We're planning to include a small slot for viewers' videos in this and future programs. We start with a contribution from Mr. Christopher Plum and 35028 Clan Line leaving Reading on a positioning special on the 9th of March and 60009 en route to Carlisle on the 11th of March. If you have any unique or interesting footage which you would like to share with all our customers, why not contact us? Contributions would be professionally edited into the program, obviously with a credit for the person concerned. So you may even see your own shots on Railtape in the future. Well, that's it from Railtape this month. We hope you enjoyed our menu of railway preservation at its best, and look forward to being with you again next month. We open this issue at Toddington, the headquarters of the Gloucester and Warwickshire Railway. As a new departure, the GWR held a diesel week from the 7th to the 11th of August, with a different class featured each day. Thursday the 10th was Class 20 Day, and marked the return to service of 20137. Purchased for preservation by GWR member Steve Madge in December 1993, the Class 20 arrived at Toddington in June 1994, and now, just over a year later, it was back in revenue service. As D8137, the English Electric Type 1 was outshopped from the Vulcan Foundry Works in April 1966 and spent much of its BR service in Scotland. Here it runs into the through station at Winchcombe. The grey rail freight livery was acquired during its last major overhaul at Derby in 1986. It's likely to be re-liveried in green, hopefully to the same high standard as restored 47105. Owned by the Brush Type 4 Fund, the gleaming 47 returned to service at last autumn's gala. Today, it is rostered for one of the Diesel Week's freight workings, in this case with engineering department stock. One of the line's major engineering tasks is maintaining Great Tunnel. The tunnel is 693 yards in length, one of the longest on a preserved line. In 1987, the Class 20 was allocated to Thornaby to work Boulby potash traffic and named Murray B. Hoffnair, hence its nickname for many enthusiasts, the Murray B. The Murray B went back to Scotland in May 1990 for a year before returning to Towton, then back to Thornaby, and finally preservation here in the shadow of the Cotswold Edge. The Class 20s were not fitted with train heating equipment and were only occasionally press-ganged into passenger duties. Latterly, the class did receive considerable publicity when they appeared on some summer service diagrams, such as those serving Skegness and Llandudno. On the other hand, the Type 4s were designed for mixed traffic, and the majority were built with steam heat generators. As 47105 heads back to Toddington with its freight, we'll take our leave of the GWR and its entertaining Diesel Week. A busy gala schedule saw 3 locomotives in steam when we visited the Dean Forest Summer Gala, which was held from the 9th to the 13th of August. When we arrived at Norchard on the Friday, the line's resident 57060 was already in action, preparing one of the gala's several freight services, which operated over the high-level line from Norchard to Park End. Also in steam was Small Prairie number 5541. The trio was completed by the Severn Valley Railway's Ginty 47383. A feature of the gala was the inclusion of freight services over the normally inactive route through to Park End. As well as this recreated branch ballast working, the program included mixed goods and parcels trains. Here's another view of the ballast train on the high-level line. passenger services worked out of Norchard on the lower line to the recently opened terminus at Lydney Junction. The next departure is in the capable hands of the Ginty. The 060 tank was another product of the Vulcan foundry at Newton-le-Willows in Lancashire. The Ginty entered LMS service in October 1926. Withdrawn in 1966, she then spent a short time working out BR commitments to the National Coal Board, from where she was rescued in 1967. The line Small Prairie is another Barry success story. Withdrawn in 1962, she was rescued from Barry and arrived by rail at the Dean Forest in 1972. The 262 tank returned to service in 1976. Here she prepares for another departure from the new station at Lydney Junction. Galas are always a good excuse to provide some unusual sights, such as this formation keeping. Built at Swindon in 1949, the Pannier spent all her BR life working in Wales until she took herself to Barry in August 1965. She then spent the next 10 years on the famous scrap lines before being rescued by the Dean Forest. All the locomotives were in BR liveries to help recreate the pre-beaching feel of the late 1950s, when short passenger trains and even shorter freight trains still plied many a British railway backwater. The Dean Forest Railway has now embarked on a determined plan to return passenger services through to Park End by 1997. Passenger services will require the permanent way to be upgraded, and it will no longer be possible to use the deserted tracks at Park End to recreate such cameos of some forgotten freight-only branch. While the small Prairie was idling away at Park End, the other two tanks were heading for Norchard with a double header. The pair also worked double-headed on the Norchard to Park End freight services. This time the Ginty carefully leads the way as the pair threads a parcels working through the exotic overgrowth to Park End. The Dean Forest Railway had promised us some unusual and memorable sights, and how right they had been. Tank engines were also hard at work in South Devon. This is the ex-NCB Hunslet Joseph, heading for Buckfast Lee. Also in service for the gala was XWD number 196, Errol Lonsdale, another Hunslet-built austerity. Errol Lonsdale is masquerading as ex-LNER Class J94, number 68011, which was withdrawn in 1965. J94 was the designation given to the distinctive Ministry of Supply 060 saddle tanks allocated to the LNER. Here, the passing station at Staverton is prepared for the next through service. Currently, Joseph is in authentic MOD sapper livery, as carried during national service at COD Bicester in the 1950s. The class was introduced in 1943. Steel castings were eliminated. They were built with iron castings and fabricated steel, intended to last for about 2 years of war service. Sapper was built in 1944 and rebuilt by Hunslet in 1964. Designed with a working pressure of 170 pounds, the rugged austerities are familiar performers on many preserved railways. On the right, the bay platform access track has its own level crossing and gates. Staverton is halfway along this attractive 7-mile branch, which follows the River Dart. This is 7714, another Great Western Pannier, but note the different design of cab roof as compared with 9681 on the Dean Forest. (7714) is currently on loan from the Severn Valley Railway. At Staverton, the supposed ex-LNER J94 heads back up the Dart Valley to Buckfast Lee. Buckfast Lee is now the terminus. Before the A38 was improved, the branch line used to extend from here to Ashburton. Finally, as the warm summer evening shadows gather, the Pannier pulls away from Buckfast Lee with another gala service down the Primrose Line. On the 2nd of September, we joined the many visitors at Welshpool Raven Square for this unique Light Railways Summer Gala. This service featured one of the line's 2 original locomotives, Countess, with restored Welshpool and Llanfair freight stock. principal crossing station is here at Castle Cairenion, which is approached by a demanding 1 in 32 curving climb. The locomotive is number 10, Sir Drivaldwyn. Here's another chance to see the powerful number 10, with a return working to Llanfair. Between opening in 1903 and closure in 1956, the line depended on its 2 Bayer Peacock 060s to work the 9 undulating miles of light railway between Llanfair and Welshpool. After protracted negotiations, the first part of the line was reopened by preservationists in 1963. There was an urgent need for additional motive power and rolling stock, complicated by the 2-foot 6-inch gauge. Number 10 was one of many built by Franco-Belge at Rheims in 1944 for the German military field railway. After the war, the superheated 080 was transferred to Austria, from where it was acquired in 1969. This is the passing loop at Sylvine. One of the 2 original and identical locomotives, number 2, was named the Countess after the Countess of Powys, wife of the Light Railway's chairman. In those parts and in those days, there was only one Countess, and any amplification was an unnecessary expense when making the nameplate. At first, the railway was operated by the Cambrian, and after grouping, the line was absorbed by the Great Western, whose accountants further shortened the names to just Earl and Countess, and renumbered them 822 and 823. Castle Cairenion still retains its original Cambrian signal box, installed in 1913. Number 14 was rescued from Sierra Leone in 1975. Having lost access through the town to the original Welshpool terminus, close to the Cambrian Line station, the railway's motive power is based here at Llanfair, where little remains of the station's original infrastructure. This is the returning number 14. Visitors to the gala included Henschel 060 well tank number 105, Siam. Number 14 was built by Hunslet at Leeds in 1954, the last of 32 locomotives they supplied to the Sierra Leone Railway. Passenger operations ceased in 1931, and for the rest of its Great Western and British Railways days, the line continued to carry mainly coal and agricultural freight. Nowadays, this popular tourist attraction has used a wide variety of sources for its passenger stock. This service includes 2 West African steel bogie coaches sandwiched between Austrian four-wheelers, including a wooden open balcony Zillertal of 1901. The sight and sound of the Hunslet wending her way back to Llanfair with another busy gala service ends our visit to this fascinating collection of narrow-gauge practice. As a result of the hot summer, Railtrack imposed a ban on steam specials. Fortunately, we still have our regular locomotive profile feature to provide a measure of mainline steam power. We begin our dip into the archives with Clan heading for Yeovil Junction. The Blackmore Vale schedules marked the return of steam to the Southwestern Main Line in 1986. Complete with correct head code, Clan works through Templecombe the following weekend. When Bullied introduced his revolutionary express passenger design in 1941, the Merchant Navy class was outshopped with distinctive air-smoothed casings and chain-driven valve gear. When the whole class was modified in a cost-saving rebuild, which began in 1956, the casing was removed to reveal this handsome development of the classic British Express Pacific. On this occasion, Clan is being turned during the route-proving test run, in advance of the following weekend's scheduled Blackmore Vale services. The rebuild design team was led by R.G. Jarvis, one of the last of a distinguished line of engineers responsible for developing the distinctive British style of locomotive design. In 1989, Clan Line was involved in opening up yet another new mainline steam route. The launch of the North Wales Coast Express had been encouraged by financial support from several local authorities. Here, the press run heads for Conwy. The 28th of 30 merchant navies, all named after famous shipping lines, Clan Line was built at Eastleigh in 1948 and subsequently rebuilt in November 1959. Following completion of electrification through to Bournemouth, she was withdrawn from BR service in July 1967 and purchased by the Merchant Navy Locomotive Preservation Society. A popular contender for mainline steam specials, this is the Capitals Limited, which took the Pacific from Shrewsbury to Swindon. Clan was also one of the elite link of locomotives regularly rostered for steam specials when they operated out of Marylebone. This is a Peaks Express working to Derby. The following April, Clan left Marylebone carrying the flags of the Risborough and District Model Railway Club. She was also carrying a black left-hand nameplate and a 14A shed code. The Risborough Venturer had been conceived as the club outing to Derby and the Midland Railway Centre, but planning coincided with BR's new policy of fixed routes, and the charter became the route prover for the White Rose specials to Sheffield. Here, Clan races for Derby, where she will hand over the 440-ton Venturer to Butterley's Black 5, 44932. In the October, Clan was again in action on the White Rose duties, but this time running via Oxford. For this run, she's carrying the matched pair of her black-backed nameplates. The following May, and the red nameplates would be back for Clan Line's last spin on the main line before withdrawal for an extensive 3-year overhaul. During the overhaul, it would be decided to fit Clan with air braking equipment, the first to be so converted. In order to maintain the Merchant Navy's elegant external lines, the equipment was mounted in a cutaway at the back of the tender. This is the first passenger-carrying run after the overhaul. The wreath and headboard are in memory of the rebuild designer Ron Jarvis, who had died 2 weeks earlier. The run took guests of the MNRPS from Victoria to Portsmouth. In March this year, Clan returned to her old stamping grounds with an ocean liner working to Southampton docks, complete with VSOE air-braked stock. We end this profile on Clan Line where we began 9 years earlier, at Salisbury. The occasion, a school special organised as part of the Woking Council centenary celebrations. The approach of the Great Central's N2 69523 opens this review of the North Norfolk Steam Gala, which we visited on the 2nd of September. This is the embankment which carries the line westwards, alongside the main coast road from Sheringham. Seen near Pilkington Bridge, the Gresley Society's N2 is one of a growing band of locomotives which are acquiring something of a reputation for their travels around preserved lines. The 062 spent Easter with the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. Heading away from Sheringham is one of the North Norfolk's long-term residents, another of the familiar austerities, number 3809, which, when new, was purchased by the National Coal Board. This normally placid railway has caused something of a stir locally with a proposal for an end-on connection with BR's Anglia Railways at Sheringham. This would be achieved by reinstating the severed level crossing which separates their respective stations. In the distance, 3809 heads for Weybourne, where the 1940 industrial Ring Haw fusses in the yard. To the right is the Class 27 D5386 in BR green livery. The preserved branch was once part of an extensive network of Midland and Great Northern Joint and Great Eastern lines which crisscrossed North Norfolk. Now Weybourne is the only passing station between Sheringham and the line's other terminus at Holt. It also hosts an increasing amount of restoration activity, with a growing fleet of working freight stock. In addition to the sight of 3 tank engines working at Weybourne, one of the highlights of the gala was the mighty B-12. LNER number 8572 is the only preserved inside cylinder 460 and was finally returned to service in March, 28 years after arriving at Sheringham. Number 3809 was completed by Hunslet at Leeds in January 1954 and was one of several Hunslets fitted with a Giesel ejector. Note the distinctive chimney. Designed for semi-fast passenger duties, 8572 became the last of the class in service, and as number 61572 ended her BR service based at Norwich, until withdrawal in September 1961. While the urbane B12 was on freight duties, we end our visit to the North Norfolk with a diminutive ring whore showing her paces on passenger work. As the Hunslet passes, we can see many of the features later adopted by the austerity saddle tanks. At 10:30 on the evening of January the 1st, 1972, a six-coach DEMU had dragged itself away from Corfe Castle, heading for Bournemouth, to consign the Swanage branch to being another footnote in the railway accountant's ledger. "23 hard years later, a small band of railway enthusiasts and supporters travelled behind a venerable Class M7 to roll back the mists of time and prove an awful lot of people wrong. Passenger services would be returning to Corfe Castle. Those intervening years had contained more than their fair share of disasters and confrontation with officialdom. While most preserved lines are proud to take on the challenge of track laying, this had probably not been the least of the Swanage Railway's headaches, which had culminated in a near financial cataclysm in 1991. Now, with the helpful cooperation of Her Majesty's Railway Inspectorate, which had accelerated clearance procedures, the £350,000 three-mile extension from Harman's Cross through Corfe to a new terminus at Norden was about to be opened. Because the picturesque town of Corfe was already so congested, the Swanage Railway had been restricted to operating as far as the run-round at Harman's Cross, until they could extend to a new site with adequate access the other side of Corfe. The station building at Corfe Castle is built in Purbeck stone, and largely unaltered from when the branch from Wareham to Swanage was first opened by the London and South Western Railway in 1885. Appropriately, the railway's 30053 was also built by the London South Western. She had last departed with a service from Corfe in April 1964. minimum of fuss, the M7 pulled away to bring the new extension into service. The first service from Norden to Swanage was in the hands of the air-smoothed Bullet Pacific No. 257 Squadron. The brave sight of 34072 brought back memories of 12-coach workings from London to Bournemouth, with a Bullet Pacific bringing the first 4 coaches on to Swanage. This was the first working of a Bullet Pacific at Corfe Castle since 1967. The Port Line Project Group's restoration of 257 Squadron was completed in 1990, and she's the only Battle of Britain class locomotive currently in steam. Such has been the success of the extension that the Railway Inspectorate has given the railway dispensation for 5-coach trains, if required, between Swanage and Norden. We returned on the 5th of September to sabre normal services over the now 6-mile railway. Once again, the hard-working M7 was in charge of this departure from Swanage. Here, the service runs under the road bridge which marks the approach to Norden. This is the railway's long-awaited goal. Not only does Norden provide a second terminus for the line, but with a large nearby car park, it now provides a congested Corfe with an important park-and-ride facility. However, an effective park-and-ride will require a more frequent rail service, which in turn depends on the commissioning of Corfe as a passing station. Currently, all passenger services are restricted to the up platform. Designed by Drummond, the 044 tank engine first emerged from Nine Elms in 1905. After withdrawal, the M7 went to Steamtown, Scranton, Pennsylvania. She returned in 1987 for a 4-year restoration by the Drummond Locomotive Society, and is now one of the few small locomotives with a full mainline steam ticket. For now, the railway has chosen to consolidate its position before pushing on through Norden towards Wareham. From being a simple out-and-back affair, the Swanage Railway now finds itself with a full end-to-end operation, and a visitor commuter service as well. As with previous challenges, they will no doubt cope admirably, and we wish them every success for the future. This month's viewers video, coming from Mr. Tom Johnson, is of particular interest as it bears witness to the last days of the motor rail service at Fort William. Although the sleeper service has had a reprieve, the motor rail service attached to it came to an end on the 27th of May, so it's now not possible for these scenes to be witnessed. Usually the service would arrive at Fort William early morning. However, on this occasion, the 5th of May 1995, the overnight sleeper motor rail service was running well over 2 hours late. The preserved British Rail Green Loco D6607 Ben Cruachan is at the head of the West Highland coaches after arrival at Fort William. Here, the 37 moves off the rake of coaches to run round the train and onto the offloading point. A similar viewpoint was seen last year for the 100 years celebration of the West Highland route, and it's somewhat ironic that the same location now bears witness to the dying days of the motor rail service. Not many people seem to be aware that travelling post offices still run on the railways, and that it is possible to post items into them. Generally, they run late in the evening and through the night, so they're not the easiest subjects to get any footage of, except, of course, during the surprisingly long, hot nights of this summertime. For the final look at Mr. Johnson's work, we concentrate on the Penzance to Bristol TPO service, scheduled into Plymouth North Road at 21:29 and out again at 21:44. The TPO coach George James was named recently after a long-serving member of the TPO staff. Shots were taken at the Brunel Bridge over the River Tamar as the travelling post office came over from Cornwall to Devon, and at Devonport Station and Plymouth Station. Thanks are due to Mr. Johnson for sharing his work with us. First is a record-breaking East Coast mainline run to introduce the Tyne-Tees Pullman. The record run achieved 140 miles per hour on the very day Mallow was to first return to steam. Clun Castle was also the first steam locomotive to visit Cornwall's main line since the end of steam. BR contributed to a form of preservation with the reinstatement of 4 withdrawn Class 40s for use on ballast trains in connection with the crew modernisation. The complete shutdown of Crew Station in order to bring track layout in line with modern standards was perhaps one of the boldest moves by British Rail in 1985. The private sector began the supply of rail buses, Class 143s, and DMUs in the form of the Class 151 prototypes from Metro Camel, which had by this time entered service on the Matlock branch from Derby. City of Truro's first mainline outing, booked for July the 20th, had to be cancelled as the locomotive's overhaul was not completed in time. However, amidst conditions of great secrecy, City of Truro ran a mystery excursion from Gloucester to Newport and return on Sunday the 20th of October. With the commencement of the 1985 timetable, a number of stations were opened or reopened. ScotRail opened this one here at Lochiel, and others at Loch Orr and Port Lechern. The Western region reopened Melksham Station, running 1 train in each direction daily, the inaugural train being seen here. We end this section with a second run of the Great Western Pullman from Bristol to Plymouth. Unfortunately, Hagley Hall was coaled at Bristol Bath Road with inferior quality coal. This prevented her from steaming freely after a good run from Taunton and Exeter. Summer Saturday scenes of the 30s were recreated on the departure from Newton Abbot. This edition ends with cab ride highlights of the Cambrian coastline between Machynlleth and Pwllheli. The cab ride was recorded from the front of Sprinter Unit number 150129 on the 11th of May, 1988.
It's David Ridge, and let's face it, before we leave here, Dave, what's the hardest thing you've just had to get used to now with this new signalling, leaving Machynlleth today? Yeah, the new signal. What else haven't we got? We haven't got a token. Anyway,
yes, we've had tokens on there. But we took it there, and then Andrew had a nice leaving Mac. I tell you what, I think the superb shot of that, the best shot of the lot. Unfortunately, the train's going back to the logo. Yeah. I tell you what, I got.
Well, they send them down on the Severn Valley as well, and they had a good Christmas card with 7819 going out towards onto the bog there towards Innislas, and that made a very good one.
Made a very good.
There they are lying on the side of the track. They're the S&P
You're not going to
lads
take that
working.
home either.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Voyage of Discovery for all us fellas who missed Cambrian steam.
You know.
Yes.
You know, pre-67.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, Voyage of Discovery.
Oh, it was lovely. We had a great time, didn't we?
Yeah.
We worked hard now and again, depending on the drive. See, this is what you haven't got. You've got to train people today, and you're not. You're born into it, really.
They do say this though, that I've heard so many drivers say it, you know, even up
Yeah, we parked there and then walked up to the top.
Request stops these are, yes. Penellig. And there's the hotel, Penellig Arms Hotel, down here on the left.
That's the main road, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
Where is it?
we're
Just by
stopping
here?
here?
The cemetery. Yeah, we are stopping here, yeah.
Can I do this again?
Yes. Oh, yes, we will be stopping, got passengers. See there, there's the grave of the Purway man with 2 railway lines alongside it.
Really?
He asked for his ashes has to be put there, yes. So that's
Well, he's off to, Lizzie's off to Crewe for a while, isn't it? And it's going to tie, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, for the
London,
LV.
Birmingham, that's it, yeah.
They brought a couple of locos out, didn't they?
Oh yes.
There was,
Well, we stabled inside here and went for
they had the 2 curry heads.
breakfast.
That's right. Well, so we came here by car and then we went on to Railtape and Jeremy's
He's there now.
Jeremy's other photographer was there.
Oh yes.
Big train.
Street. Yeah, that's the 940 one.
That's the one that Steve's going to take over, isn't it?
Have any of your sprinters been upgraded to 3 cars yet?
No, well, it broke our token, so we had to have pile of them working.
Oh, yeah.
That was the worst incident we had. You remember Idi Amin's? They were never looked on as a good engine in steam days. Let's face it. They were a load of rubbish. We thought as footplate men, because we were obviously
Well, you're
we had our own
prejudiced.
yes to start with.
Western men were very insular.
Would you say? Would you say that? The Western men inward looking.
Great Western.
Heaven forbid. Not much.
Staying in Aberystwyth, and I did the complete set.
It's a 12 o'clock train. This is the elephant barn, isn't it?
No, yes.
Yeah. Yes, you've got people there as well. Yeah.
Do you know John Ellison?
No, never met him.
He's quite a character.
Useless stills photographer, there he is.
See, they're working under the bridge here now. Welding and
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Full to capacity was marvellous. Those trips down here on a Sunday when they 10/8s on and full to capacity. This is a totally new level crossing, made in Germany, sadly.
Is it?
Rubberized look surface, yeah.
What's that? Rubber?
Rubberized, yeah. Made in Germany level crossing.
I'm going to take him in the bottle again, but it's just for the last hour. But unfortunately, my daughter's got a school plate tomorrow night. So
You're on the same boat as me.
It's working all right now, see them buzz up by the board now, yes. I've got the radio signaling plan and it's got them all on, which is beautiful for reference. And this is another naughty crossing, Dufferin, this one.
The one that amazes me, though, the timings of trains up and down Shout now.
yeah.
Half a minute faster down, half a minute faster up than down.
Yeah. True.
Do you
Yeah,
have
they're on our property, see.
Do you have an audible warning as well?
No, we don't.
I was going to say,
No.
I haven't noticed much.
We will, on RETV, we will use a permanent magnet.
Mm-hmm.
That
That'll
audible
tell you
warning.
whether it's working as well as having a vision.
Well, no, it won't. No.
So what
no.
would happen in fog?
Basically,
You've got to
it's the
approach.
responsibility of the driver to approach at such a speed as, and of course you'll have the two-way conversation with the driver obtaining his staff, and we've got a cab display unit,
It's
which
because you've got to go into some aircraft mode by saying over and out.
over and out there, aren't you really, Jeff? Yes. see our lights working now.
Oh, yeah.
This is the
You
one
were-
where we had a fatality.
Yes, this
This
is
is the one where he overtook another car.
You can see where he was off the road, where he put our unit off the road there.
Oh, yeah.
He was actually straddling the white lines and all, so, and he finished up 96 yards 4 inches, which is just by this signal post. That's where he stopped. So
Dear.
This is just
great
the thing we
steamers,
want.
great steamers, you know. But yeah, they were noisy. They were rough in their boxes because they were hammered, you know. We worked on South Wales coal, as you know, whereas they had Yorkshire Long Tom and that, and it was beautiful coal. Oh, yes, marvellous,
Beautiful,
marvellous.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and
Where is this?
this is Penryn Dyder. That's the explosives side of it with Cook's. It's now ICI, it's low heavy freight. It's only in the summer that you get the 37s down here, or on the weed killing where we've got to come.
The weekend one.
That's right.
Has the
yeah.
weed killer not been up yet?
Not yet,
Hasn't
no,
it?
no. No, we're round about,
Have we?
yes, oh yes.
Oh, have we?
Yes, quite a few. Coming out of Shrewsbury up round Hanwood,
Yeah.
there's all concrete
was it?
sleepers.
What was it?
The old concrete sleepers and the new concrete sleepers.
Yeah.
The very heavy ones, the more modern ones.
It's a
See
shame
Port
that
Maddock.
doesn't supply
They are. Is the train
railway
coming out?
signal.
No, can't see it.
That's the clock, is it?
Across there, yeah. Sorry, Jeremy, you were
It's a
saying?
shame there's no traffic from there.
Yes,
It
yes.
probably used to be, didn't it?
No, I think
Connected one.
that Montego in half.
Oh, yeah.
That bus.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened
Yes.
there.
Lucky. Come on,
that-
there's a few scratches.
That's right. Yes.
There's something peculiar gone wrong there.
But
They said there was an inside bit.
Yes.
Slight-
Welsh Mountain Railway there, isn't it? Yes.
Oh, West
West
Island,
Island.
yeah,
Say,
They said there was only a slight bump on the bus, didn't they?
Yes. On the bumper, wasn't it, I
Yeah.
believe?
I like the colour scheme here.
Cambrian colours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very nice.
Green and white. We do on the railway is controlled by the Department of Transport.
MOT, that's right, yeah.
The worry is presumably because of the sighting from
It's a vulnerable road junction as such, but
Sighting
if
of
everyone,
because of that
it's the
building.
education of the public it comes to, really.
Can you just re-educate me, Graham? These pegs in the centre, these are alignment.
These alignment ones for the
That's it.
civil engineer, yes.
That's it, yeah.
Well, you can see the curve,
Yeah.
and there's a camper up for this curve as we go round into Abereric. Is
Ah.
little halt just on the right-hand side
Do you
platform.
David, do you ever get idiots sort of go out and signal for you to stop and then run off?
No, not very often.
The vandal type who do that sort of thing.
They've had vandal types of cricket.
New co-op
simulating.
building as we go in here.
Leo.
On the top. Yes. But it was on the actual hill, was it? And he
No,
took
you
it
took it.
off.
You take it coming out. You know, you got about a 2 or 3 minute.
Yes, coming
plan
out
of
of the
it.
level crossing.
Oh yes.
Must have been taken from up there, Jeremy.
I think so. This was the goods.
Yes,
yard
this
here,
is
was it?
Patelli, all down here on the left, yes. The box was just past there.
Yeah.
More recently they knocked it down, haven't they,
Yes.
Dave? Quite recently.
And the
But all
sheds,
that was the
presumably,
yard
were there,
down
were they,
through
as well?
there. Yes. Where actually was the
Yes, it must have been up
local
on
shed?
the hill,
That's part of
just
it over
there.
there, isn't it?
That's it,
Yes.
that's it.
That's part of the shed over there now. It's
Got industrial factory, but that's got
Yeah.
box on it.
We use this for the run-round facility in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's being kept at least.
Oh yes. We will still use it. We still use it with the local
Of
hall
course you've
shop.
got those, haven't you? Yes.
And of course, we also use this to get our water off the fire service.
Oh, they come up and park
Yes,
alongside.
that's right.
Yeah, we know.
Just by here over the fence. That's right.
Yes.
There's the hydrant actually.
So, you've got a tablet, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's got the tote. Yeah.
No, see, the signal box is still there.
It's a no signalman token section. It's NST.
Oh, I see. It says it's a
Yes, so it's controlled.
Oh, it's the old
Yes.
basic, the old one engine in steam basis,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It's controlled, still under electric toking system, but controlled from
Well,
Portmadoc with a magazine at this end. So if we did have to shove
Oh, I
this one
see, you could put inside
you can
it.
put it in the magazine, and then you cooperate through the signalman at Portmadoc to withdraw it.
You get another
Yes.
release, yeah.
Yeah, they've cleaned up the station anyway.
Oh, they've
Well,
made this one's always been pretty clean,
Mhm.
pretty well disciplined. This one.
It's the classic selling off the site for a supermarket.
Oh yes,
stuff,
this
yeah.
is it. Yes.
It's all like, were the tracks on that side originally, or?
Yes.
They were.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bay line over the other side there,
Yeah.
Dave, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, you've arrived at Belly, and it's now 12:59, 59, I should say.